Today we're going to learn about transforms and distorts in Lens Studio. Let's get started. Hey there everyone, welcome back to Loop Coding Center's Maker Guide. Today we'll be focusing on the distort and transform features that are built into Lens Studio. Now today we'll be doing that through the distort template that's already provided, but I actually want to retouch base on what we learned last week, which was animation through the means of the sprite sheet that we learned last time. Though that won't be coming back up for a couple of episodes, I wanted to point out that with that, we're slowly building a tool set to be able to understand this program as a whole, which is the entire purpose of this series, which is really just getting to know how a 3D space works, as well as getting to know how to manipulate things in it and what types of properties will be common. You'll actually find a trend of things that commonly are shared between programs. So when we move away from Lens Studio and transition into Blender, you'll see very similar concepts be shared. So it's important to take as much out of these videos as possible and really just take it as an experience to learn. And with that, let's go ahead and set up. Setup today will be relatively simple, as all we have to do is open up our distort template. And while we wait for that to load in, we'll discuss what we'll specifically be manipulating today. And thankfully it loaded in quick, just because it's a pretty simple file to load in, and it's a pretty simple thing to create. So if you've got a face in mind or a face shape in mind, this is a great filter for starting off in getting to understand Lens Studio, as well as just getting some basic understanding of math and, well, the math that goes behind it. So to start off, what we'll actually do, and most likely what you'll run into, is this scene right here. It'll be this very creepy scientific horror movie sort of scene that we're looking at. And the reason being is that we're actually looking at two different types of entities, but three entities altogether. And to simply state it, we have entities that are here to simply distort and or take whatever is in that position or X and Y grid on our X and Y grid for our filter, and then moving things outside of it or in whatever direction it may be. Second, we have an overlay that goes on top of wherever the exact location we're aiming for is, and then displaying something over top while also transforming the size of it. But with that, we have a quick run through of our setup. Now, let's get into the specifics. To start off, we'll go ahead and begin with one of the most simple version of what we're looking at on our screen right now. So, what we're looking at specifically is a liquefy point within Lens Studio. A liquefy point is essentially a point that we can place based on a designated spot on our face. So here you'll see that we actually have a layer for distortion effects specifically, and then within that a face liquefy for the eyes, and then from there we specifically have the liquefy point, which is attached, if you'll notice, to a custom point. Here you'll also find that we can attach things to specific eyes. So if I wanted to, I'm going to say this is the left eyeball, it would automatically attach it to the left eyeball. But because this is just the preset and we're working with that, we'll go ahead and undo what I had just done and set it back to its custom point to have it properly work, and just so it's simpler to manipulate for those working on this from home. With this, what we'll also do is look at the other properties that we can manipulate. Back to our handy inspector, we can see the properties that are really dictating how this liquefy point works. So, all we really have to explain here is the fact that there is something on an XY grid displayed over your eye, specifically put here on top of the face model to create context for the program. And with that, we have control of the radius, which allows us to control how far we have from the center of the circle to the outer part of the circle. So with that, we can expand it, and we end up with a Hunchback of Notre Dame sort of situation over here. Or we can shrink it as well, maybe make it a baby face if you'd like. I've seen transforms where we've also, recently, they've become popular where it will transform a person's face into an animal. A horse, a penguin, a bird, whatever it be. It's all possible with the liquefy points, or what we'll be working with in just a second, the face stretch. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and set this eye equal to 4 points so that we want to have one eye bigger than the other. Now, let's say we actually want to have more points. What would we do in that scenario? So to simply make another liquefy point, all we do is copy and paste the point, or duplicate if that's easier, and it should end up right here. And here we'll find that it isn't in one specific area. So let's say we want it to expand the nose in this instance. From here, we can expand this way, and you'll see that it creates this horrendous monster. But I just wanted to quickly reiterate and really teach you that it's as simple as that to add another point. And you can work on this, on any idea you have from a template just like that. So let me get rid of this point right here, and now we are back to our 2 original points. And with that, we'll transition into the lips that we were looking at earlier. Here, we're messing with the face inset, and to be quick about it, it's the same thing that we had with the liquefy points in the eyes, but here we're also controlling the scale, as well as factors, both scale on the X and Y axis, as well as the Z. So if I had the lens and I had it pushed against my face like that, you'd be able to see my face go whoa. But aside from that, we have our face region, which we can select, our blend mode, which is a whole other subject in itself, our alpha, which controls the transparency of the overlay, the outer border, so the area in which this filter can exist on top, as well as, let's see what else is important here, the source scale. Simply taking the source and modifying its scale. So alongside that, we have our subdivision count, but that's a whole other science we don't need to dive into, because what I want to do is dive into this face stretch that we have in order to edit. So now, to cap off this video of Distorts and Transforms, we'll transition over into our face stretch. Here you can see we have a face template to work off of, and we have individual points in order to modify how our face stretches. So if I wanted a really pointy chin, or even one that becomes a drop that falls off my face, I can do that. But let's give it a nice big old villain chin, or a crimson chin maybe even in this case. And here we can modify how exaggerated the feature is for each individual point, as well as modifying just the X and Y positions of the features of our face relative to certain points that the algorithm identifies. So with that, we also have this transform that allows us to modify the actual size of certain points, but really what matters is the points that we can modify here in order to manipulate the face in whichever manner we'd like. So with that, we have a quick overview of the distort and the transforming, which is really the true nature of the distorting we're doing right now, in Lens Studio. With this, I challenge you to try and recreate the look of someone through a filter, or the look of an animal through the filter. With that, we'll end off the video. Until next week, have a nice week.